Hello, everybody. I'm Derek Arden, and welcome to Monday Night Live, our live and uncut podcast, which goes out every Monday and is shown on YouTube and the Negotiators podcast. Welcome to everybody. Today, I'm delighted to welcome back Tracy Hooper, founder of the Confidence Project. This is Tracy's third appearance on Monday Night Live, and she is my 222nd guest, which is pretty amazing over 4.5 years. And thanks for coming on 3 times. And Tracy comes from Portland in Oregon. And for people who don't know where that is, it's on the west coast of America, south of Vancouver and north of San Francisco. Today, Tracy is going to talk to us about the one of her most popular presentations, called Confident Conversations. As many of you know, Tracy's been a TV newsreader, reporter, and anchor before starting the Confidence Project. 3 clients she's asked me to mention because they're pretty big names: Nike, Intel, and Daimler Trucks. Tracy, thanks for joining us. It's a great pleasure to have you back, and thanks for getting up so early in the morning to join us.
It's not so early. It's 9 a.m. here, and we have very long, beautiful days in the summer. Portland, Oregon is known for all the rain that we get in the Northwest, but the summers are glorious. Low humidity, lots of sun, and it's light until 9 o'clock or 9:30 p.m. Happy to be back.
Brilliant. So tell us about your latest talk, the Confident Conversations.
Confident conversations. In my view, we have gotten rusty with our conversations. We do a lot of texting, there's a lot of emailing, and sometimes I say to myself, Tracy, just pick up the phone and call your client, voice to voice. Let him or her hear you. And I think there's value in having real live conversations. And so over the next 25 or 30 minutes, I'll talk with you about some techniques to get conversations started, and then some sticky situations that I can help you with some good techniques. Shall I jump right in, Derek?
Go for it. Thank you.
Okay. Here's some background, a couple of stories. I wish you all could meet my smart, wise, elegant, 91-year-old mother, Barbara, who we call Mom Air. And Mom Air is the original talk show host. I'm one of 6 children, and every night at the dinner table, my mother would start the show. She would say, Libby, tell us how play rehearsal was today. Tommy, you looked great on the wrestling mat. Missy, I know you have a science fair experiment coming up. What are you going to do? Meg, you have a spelling bee. It wasn't that prescriptive, of course, but simply by including all of us, whether it was Libby, age 12, or my brother Vince, my youngest brother, who was 2 at the time, we all felt included in the conversation. And every night, simply by talking, we practiced how to have a conversation, how to speak up, how to stand up for ourselves if we got interrupted, how to be curious and ask questions, how to practice the art of amplification, which is a fancy term that they use in corporate life right now, which is amplifying people in the room. Mom would say, Tommy, hold on a second. Okay, Meg, what did you want to say? Okay. Good. Okay, Tommy, carry on. So she would amplify people in the room and make sure that everybody was heard. And then she taught us, of course, the fine art of listening. My dad was a sportscaster, a sports reporter and sports anchor in Baltimore, Maryland, that's my hometown, which is 50 miles north of Washington, D.C. And you can imagine all the interesting people who Daddy interviewed, all these athletes from all over the world on a regular basis. So we had very lively dinner table conversations. Plus my grandparents would come, and we had neighborhood kids. And here's what our parents modeled for us: to teach everyone as if they are the most important person in the room. That is the golden rule. Fast forward many years, I was hired as a news reporter at WBAL TV in Baltimore, which is the station where my father worked all those years. And on my first day of work, Betsy Harmatz, who was the news director, met me in the lobby and said, "We're delighted you're here. Come on into the newsroom." And it's exactly as it looks on television. A huge room, TV monitors everywhere, the click, click, click of the keyboard, the hum of the police scanner and the AP wire, and everybody talking and on phones. And Betsy said, put your gear at your desk, and your desk is all the way in the back on the right behind Jane. And I thought, oh my gosh, my desk, my cubie is right behind Jane Miller. Jane was the investigative news reporter for the whole region. And I could not believe my great good fortune to sit behind her, because I got a master class on how to have a conversation, how to be a good reporter. I would listen to the questions that she would ask, and then there would be a pause, and then her follow-up question, and then another pause. And even though I only heard one side of the conversation, I knew Jane was getting people to say things to her that they never imagined they'd be saying to a news person. Over time, I became a good reporter. And I'm telling you this because I learned how to be a conversationalist around the dinner table and from quality, capable, brilliant news people like Jane Miller. And the operative word is learned. And the reason I'm saying this to you is I believe no matter what anyone's personality is, we can all learn how to be good conversationalists. So let's jump right into the PowerPoint. I have more than a couple of slides to share. And give me a thumbs up if you can see this. Yes? Excellent. Good. I believe that every good conversation begins with this truism, and that is that everybody's favorite subject is themselves. People love, for the most part, people love to talk about themselves. And I always try to remember the golden rule that my parents taught me: treat everyone as if they are the most important person in the room, because you are. Except for this guy. This is my favorite New Yorker cartoon. It says, it keeps me from looking at my phone every 2 seconds. And isn't that what happens? You go to speak with somebody and they're looking at their phone and they're looking around for somebody more important to come along. It's very annoying. So this guy needs this to keep him in the pink. I'm going to offer these techniques. This is from my book called The Now Hello: What to Say, What to Do in the World of Work. It's the confidence playbook for the world of work now. And likely many of these techniques you all know. And if you do, these could be refreshers for you, or think of it as a chance to model and teach these skills to other people in your world, to your children, to your grandchildren, to people you may be in touch with in a networking group or a business group or a book club. People have gotten rusty, and here's a chance to polish up. Okay, here we go. Number 1, give a compliment. Everybody loves a compliment. My dear friend Miriam Thornburg, who was very big in the world and died at the age of 89, used to say this: if you can't think of something to say to someone, tell them, I like your shoes. Shoes are a big deal in Portland, Oregon. As you may know, Nike World Headquarters is here in Portland, and Adidas US World Headquarters is in Portland, Oregon, and we have many other shoe companies. We're known as Shoe Town, USA. If you can't think of something to say, tell them you like your shoes. But I have another friend, however, named Stanley Furtick, who had a great career at Time Warner, including 15 years at HBO. And he said he never complimented people on what they look like or what they wore. Cool glasses, nice sweater, great haircut. No, Stanley would never do that. He would only give someone a compliment on an accomplishment. Congratulations on making it into the President's Circle, or the book you had published, or the award or the recognition you had, or on a trait. I admire what a strategic thinker you are, how creative, flexible, thoughtful, what a good negotiator you are, how generous you are. So an accomplishment or a trait. That was Stanley's motto. I'm going to move on here. Number 2, use the magic words to ask the Kickstarter questions. And the magic words are what, how, and tell me more. What, how, and tell me more. I believe what is the most underappreciated question, single word, in all the English language. Can you all see this clearly? This is Stephen Colbert. He's a comedian, a US comedian. And this is from the Wall Street Journal style section. This was the men's spring issue. So they have a short article in the front, and then they have a more in-depth article in the middle of the magazine. But listen to the questions that they asked for this short questionnaire. What is the one thing people would be surprised to learn about you? What's the one thing you would grab from your house after your family if it caught on fire? What was the one phone call that changed your life? What is the one thing you always do before taping a show? What is the one thing you would most likely like to be remembered for? What? What? That's such a cool word that opens up conversation. By the way, what's the one thing you would most likely like to be remembered for? He says, being a dad. What, how, and tell me more. Number 3, be curious. And I know you all are curious because you're here every single week. And curiosity can come in lots of different forms. It is about devouring books and magazines, newsworthy publications. My mother, Mom Mayer, is my chief content officer. Mom's always finding an article, send me a link to it, or cutting it out and popping it in the mail and sending it to me. Attend seminars and TEDx talks and lectures and concerts. Watch LinkedIn learning courses and come to Monday Night Live. Listen to podcasts and good radio and music, and pay attention to people's body language, their facial expressions, their tone of voice, people's breathing. Those are those intuitive soft skills that we don't fully appreciate, but they can really help us to get engaged in a conversation. Number 4, do research. There are any number of ways that we can find research anywhere. LinkedIn is my go-to research source. And I think it's a great way to learn about people like Derek Arden. You can go to Derek's website and say, oh, an award-winning author, international best-selling book. I could say, I understand you have a best-selling book. Tell me about it. What inspired you to write the book? What's the most important takeaway you want people to have when they finish reading your book? What are the most practical negotiation tips that you can offer? What, how, and tell me more with slightly little bit of research. Damian Lewis, if Godfrey were here, I'd say to him, how do you know Damian Lewis? He's such an interesting author and an historian. How did you get to know him? What, how, and tell me more. Several years ago, my brother-in-law called me. He said, Tracy, his name is Joe. Tracy, this is Joe. I just met the coolest person at a conference in Nashville. Her name is Sherry Fitz, and she trains people in financial services to use social media to market their products. And she was so dynamic, and she lives in Portland, Oregon. I'm going to introduce you to. Fabulous. So Joe made the introduction, and we met a couple of weeks later for coffee. And of course, before we met for coffee, I went to her website and I looked at the About page, and it talks about her deep expertise in the retirement plan and wealth management industries, and that she wrote a book called Deconstructing Digital, and that she has a podcast called Women Rocking Wall Street. But if you went all the way down to the bottom of her About page, it says this. If all of that isn't enough to pique your interest, Sherry was also named Paper Girl of the Year in 1976. So you can be confident that when you work with Sherry Fitz, she delivers. So of course you can imagine what I did. I met her for coffee. I shook her hand. I said, Sherry, I am delighted to meet you. And by the way, congratulations on being named Paper Girl of the Year. Well, she killed herself laughing. And that was her indication that I had done my homework. I had found out something about her that could be a fun starter of a conversation. Number 5, make a connection. And this is simply, who do you know, who they know? Who do you know, who they know? Whenever I'm sending an email and I'm introducing someone, I might say at the top of it, thanks to David Camp. Dear so-and-so, thanks to David Camp, we are connected. Or thanks to Jill English. Or I can always use someone's name if it will lead me to having a conversation with someone else. But in person, who do you know, who they know? We all know on this show, Patricia Fripp. How do you know Patricia? What do you think of her fabulous hats? There are all kinds of ways to start a conversation if you make that connection. Or Will Kintish suggested that I look for you here at the conference. If you go up to someone, you can use someone else's name. And number 6, listen. Listening, I believe, is the unsung hero of a good conversation. And it's ironic that the anagram for listen is silent. You all may remember Barbara Walters. Raise your hand if that name sounds familiar to you. She was a newswoman. She really paved the way for women like me to get into the news business. And she used to say this. She said, it's not the first question that you ask that matters. It's the second, because the second shows that you are listening. And Larry King, do you recognize him? He was in the media business for 50 years. He had a program on CNN here in the States called Larry King Live. And he used to say this about listening. I never learned anything while I was talking. I never learned anything while I was talking. And this, when you are listening, you can give all those nonverbal cues that you are paying attention. You can nod your head. You can lean in. You can raise your eyebrows. When you raise your eyebrows, that's the classic sign that you're paying attention, that you really are clued into that person. Now, what if you can't remember someone's name? Okay, now we're into a conversation. What if you can't remember someone's name? They're coming straight at you and you're thinking, I'm going to run in the other direction because I cannot remember who you are. I think I know you, but I'm not sure. Here's what you do. You preempt the awkward. You extend your hand and you go straight for that person and you say, hi, Tracy Hooper. Typically, they will offer their name right away too. It's almost a Pavlovian response. Oh, hi there, it's Tracy Hooper. And they might say, I'm Jill English. Oh, yes, indeed, Jill. Great to see you again. But what if you can't remember and you don't have a chance to preempt? You can do this. You can say, oh, you look so familiar to me. Remind me of your name. This is making them feel important. You look so familiar to me. Remind me of your name. Here's another one. Oh, I remember you from the time we were both at Buckingham Palace. Oh, yes, indeed. I remember that. And that way people connect that we saw each other at some place famous or at a conference or at an industry event or a networking event. I remember you from, help me with your name. Remind me of your name. And then finally, someone says, oh, Tracy, hi, how are you? And you say, thank you for remembering my name. Remind me of yours. And they would say, I'm Carl Walsh. And then Carl might say, we've met 5 times before. Has that ever happened to you all? You say, oh, yes. Oh, my gosh, you're absolutely right. Out of context. Thanks for reminding me. Great to see you again. That does happen. I mean, we've all been in that uncomfortable space. Oh, yes, I've met you 5 times. I can't believe you don't remember who I am. Thank you for reminding me. Out of context. And then you carry on with the conversation. What did you think of the lecture? How did you like the movie? What was your favorite part of the play? You just move right on. You don't need to make a meal out of it, and you don't need to over apologize. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm great with faces, but terrible with names. No need to do that. We meet a lot of people in our world. We don't need to make apologies for them. What about if you can't pronounce someone's name? That can be scary too. I remember one time I encourage people to think of a mnemonic device to help them remember how to pronounce someone's name. After a presentation once, this woman came up to me and she said to me, oh, it's very nice to meet you. My name is Shin Shin Yu. And I said, oh my goodness, so nice to meet you too. Help me with your name again. And she said, yes, Shin, and she put it to her chin, to her shin, Shin Chin Yu. And I thought, that's brilliant. I'll always remember that. So if you have a difficult name, or if you have a name that you can help people remember, using that mnemonic device helps. But you can also say, would you kindly tell me your name again? I want to get it right. Dale Carnegie, who wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People, said this: a name to a person is the sweetest and most important sound in any language. Help me with your name again. I want to get it right. Or quite simply, help me pronounce your name, please. Typically, people who have difficult names know that their names are difficult. Therefore, they will, take their time helping you to learn it. Now, breaking and entering. This is not a crime. This is how do you break and enter into a conversation with confidence. And there are 2 different kinds of breaking and entering. One is, may I join you? And the other one is come join us. So may I join you? Let's say you want to join a group who's talking and you think you don't want to say, am I butting in? Is this a private conversation? I hope I'm not bothering you. You don't want to say any of that. You can simply wait for a slight break in the conversation and say, may I join you? I just heard you talking about the Olympics in Paris next month. No need to say anything other than, may I join you? And typically, if it's at a public event, people are not talking about something that's private. And most of the time, they will welcome you into the conversation. Now, what if you are concerned about whether you should join that conversation? The way to know whether you should or shouldn't join is what I call toe-to-toe means no. If two people are toe-to-toe and their eyes are engaged and they're not looking around or making any gestures, that's the classic nonverbal cue that they do not want to be interrupted. But if someone's foot is turned out to the side and they're gesturing a little bit, you can certainly go and say, may I join you? I just heard you talking about your trip to South Africa. Now, the other is come join us. And that is if you are a part of a conversation, or you're not a part, you are a part of a conversation, but there's someone on the outside and you want to welcome them into the conversation. You know, when we're on the outside of any group, no matter what age we are or what job title we've ever had, when we're on the outside, it takes us right back to the 6th grade. When we weren't invited to that birthday party or to go on that camping trip or to be on that softball team. You know, we feel left out. So I encourage you to be the person to welcome someone into the conversation and say something as simple as, come join us. Now, what if you can't remember that person's name? What do? You say this. You say, oh, hi, come join us. We were just talking about Paul's trip to South Africa. Do you all know each other? And people will typically say, no, you know, I'm Martin Kearns. I'm Nigel Kirby. You know, people will offer their name. Do you all know each other? Now, let's say you do remember the person who's over here. Let's say this is Paul Coleman. He's on the outside, but I can't remember the names of everybody in the group I'm talking to. It could be people you know well or people you've just met. So this is what you do. You say, oh, Paul, come join us. We were just talking about Nigel's trip to Paris. You know what? I'll let you all introduce yourselves. I'll let you all introduce yourselves. It's as if you're doing them a favor by introducing themselves when really they're helping you out because you can't remember everyone's name. And I will encourage you all to use all these skills by practicing with people you know. Practice welcoming somebody into a group. Or if you're trying to teach a young person in your life these skills, practice with them. And that way, when you get into a situation in real life, you'll know what to do next. What if you're not included in a conversation? About last October, I was invited to speak at a presentation in LA, and they had a party, a reception for all the presenters and then the VIPs. So I was having a great conversation with someone who had come to my workshop, who was an engineer at NASA. And it was 10 minutes we were following back and forth. And then another man came up to my conversation partner and started talking to him. Jim, how are you? Good to see you. And then they started talking. And I was completely left out of the conversation. And I jumped in a couple of times. I asked some questions. Well, it turns out the new fella was a physicist. So I guess a physicist outranks a conversation partner who's a specialist in communication. After a couple of minutes, I realized I was not going to be involved in the conversation. And so I said this, you know what, you guys? I'll let you finish your conversation. Take care. And then I walked away with my dignity intact. And you can do that too if you are not being included in a conversation. You know what, you all? I'll let you finish your conversation. Take care. And then leave. Derek, do we have time for one more skill, which is how to what I call the goodbye formula? Does that work? All right. The goodbye formula.
Yes, we do. I was muted, sorry, because I had a bit of a cough. So yeah, you carry on, Tracy, please.
Look who's joining us.
This
Patricia
is
Fripp. You're just in time to learn the goodbye formula. The goodbye formula is a 4-step process that helps you to get out of conversations when you need to move on. Sometimes you finish, the conversation is over, but people don't know how to stop. They just keep going on and on. So here's the goodbye formula. Thank you, acknowledge, offer a farewell phrase, and the goodbye gesture. You want to thank the person for the conversation, acknowledge something that they said that lets them know that you heard, offer a farewell phrase, and I'll give you a couple of suggestions, and then a goodbye gesture. If you shook hands with someone at the beginning, you would shake hands at the end. If you're doing a fist bump or an elbow, whatever you're comfortable with, that's generally how you greet them, is how you would say goodbye. And it would be something like this: the thank you. Thank you for our conversation today. I'll remember this. Or thank you for your interest in my work. Or thank you for the opportunity to speak with you or to meet with you today. I don't necessarily want to thank people for their time, because I feel we all have 24 hours in a day and everyone's time is as valuable as everyone else's. So I say, thank you for the opportunity to present. Thank you for the opportunity to share my marketing plan. Thank you for your interest in my work or my project. So there's the thank you. Now, that was a fantastic story you told. Now you're acknowledging something that you talked about during the conversation. That was a fantastic story you told. Or good to hear your presentation went well. Or, congratulations on your fabulous vacation. Sounds like you had a wonderful time. So you thank them, you acknowledge something that you talked about, and then please excuse me, I need to see Patricia Fripp before I go. Now, don't tell someone you have to go to the bar, because they will follow you to the bar. I'm going to get another drink. They'll follow you right over and get another drink. Or don't tell them you're going to the restroom, because they will follow you to the restroom. This is the person who is the can't stop talking. You can say something like, please excuse me, I need to see Patricia before I go. Or I need to switch gears. Forgive me, I need to switch gears. I have a meeting that starts in a couple of minutes. It was lovely to meet you. Take care. So thank you, acknowledge, farewell phrase, and then the goodbye gesture. There you have it. There's my mom, the original talk show host. There's my
Wow.
mother. I thought you'd want to see her. She's 91 years old now, and I'll be seeing her next month. There's my oldest sister, Libby, and then Tracy, my brother, Tom, my sister, Meg, my sister, Missy, and my youngest brother, Vince. There you have it. The family with the original talk show host.
Well, congratulations on that family of yours, Tracy. Where are your kids? Come on.
Our children, we have 3 daughters. Our oldest daughter lives in New York City, and our youngest 2 live in Boulder, Colorado, in the Rocky Mountain region of the US.
Brilliant. And you see them quite often. I can't understand. I can't get my head around how far away people live from
Yeah,
each other in the
so we
USA.
live in Portland, Oregon, in the northwest of the US, and Colorado is about a 2.5-hour flight for us. If we want to go visit Margaret, our oldest daughter, in New York, it's an all-day affair. It's we're 3 hours behind them, so it takes all day, 6 hours, 6 or 7 hours to fly across the country. And it's interesting because we've taught our children the art of conversation, and there are all these studies that show that having dinner together, it keeps children from getting involved in drugs and alcohol abuse and other problems that can happen to young people. And I remember when the girls were little, we would all sit down at the table and we would talk about highs and lows. What was your high for the day? Well, I passed this test, or I got accepted onto this team or something. And then, what's a low for the day? And that's kind of how we do it. And it was funny because when the girls were little, we'd often have friends over for dinner, and the conversations at the table would go on for hours. And someone said to me one time, whenever you go to the Hoopers, you better make sure you have a lot of time, because you'll be at the dinner table for 3 hours. But one of these skills really are so learnable. And if anyone has any questions, I'd love to hear them, because it can give you confidence when you can have a conversation with anyone, whether it's the Queen of England, God rest her soul, or the person who collects your garbage. They're all ways of starting a rich conversation with anyone.
everybody is important as each other. Actually, that was a
Yeah.
fantastic presentation, Tracy. I do have one question for you before we close this part of the session. And I've been taking notes like mad. You know, these are very common sense skills, but of course, common sense isn't that common. In fact, it's quite uncommon. One of my favorite expressions when I'm teaching people negotiating is most people know what to do, but then don't do what they know. We talked about that last week, and you told me the reason that they don't do what they know. Do you remember that?
I hope I remember. What I would say today is they haven't been taught. I mean, we all learn mathematics and we learn about literature and history and the like, but no one really teaches you how to have a conversation or how to mesh yourself into a conversation or to start one. Is that what I said, Derek?
No, you said practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
That's what you said.
Yeah.
And they're both absolutely right, aren't they? Because we don't practice the skills of what you're suggesting. Losing people at meetings. Will Kinchis talks about that, and he'll talk about it later, I'm sure. But you know, they're similar skills, but people don't practice them, so they get scared of networking or having a conversation with people they don't know. Tracy,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. Your enthusiasm is infectious. Your
Oh,
energy is infectious, and we can't help learning and taking this forward, even if some of us are a little bit more mature than we'd like to be at this stage in our careers. Will you stay on and join us, please?
love to. That'd be a pleasure. Thank you.
Fantastic. Can I ask all members of Monday Night Live, please, to give you a vote of thanks in
Thank
the
you.
normal way? If you've enjoyed this, please please like it. Please pass it on to younger people who you might know, because this is such an important skill. And these days, younger people are looking at their smartphones rather than doing too much of networking face-to-face meetings. Thanks, Tracy, so much. And we look forward to having you back again for the fourth time on Monday Night Live at some stage in the future. Will you join us?
That would be my great pleasure. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you.